In episode 4, everybody comes back to the office Monday and they start talking about what they did on the weekend. Everybody had a pretty busy weekend with Della hanging out with Anita. They had a little bit of a sleepover, and it was something that Della desperately needed because ever since Perry told her about what happened with Emily Dodson, it's been consuming her just like it's been consuming Perry. So she needed kind of a little bit of a getaway, even though she's cheating. Stop cheating, girl. Perry, meanwhile, went to go take Teddy horseback riding, and they just so happened to run into Teddy's teacher, Miss Ames. Turns out Miss Ames teaches horseback riding class at that farm for extra money. So she takes Teddy and Perry along for a ride, and while they're on a trail, you find out that Miss Ames recently got to LA about a year ago after she got divorced. So she's a free agent, and she does seem to like herself a little bit of Perry, because as they go their separate ways, she says, hey, I'm here every Saturday. Come back if you need another lesson. When everybody gets back in the office, though, Monday, they're ready to work. No one more so than Marianne, who has done some digging and been able to find Noreen's brother. Perry was tipped off that Noreen might have a sibling because there was a picture of the two in her room. It turns out this sibling is not just any normal sibling. His name's Vincent Taylor, and he's a councilman. He just so happens to be a councilman in the district where Brooks McCutcheon was trying to put his baseball stadium. They think it's maybe a bit of a reach, but it's something they could go on. And as Perry and Della are discussing it, Paul Drake casually walks in and puts the gun on the table. He tells both of them, this is the murder weapon. And I got it from a dude selling guns 30 feet away from where Mateo and Raphael live. Guys, they did it. This was not an easy decision for Paul to make. He consulted his wife on what he should do. Give the gun to Perry and let him know that his clients are guilty, or not give the gun to Perry and risk the chance that he's surprised in court. Ultimately, he decided the right thing to do was to give it to Perry. Della locks it up in his safe, and then the three head over to go meet with Raphael and Mateo. They don't initially tell Raphael and Mateo about the found gun. They just ask him, okay, this is your last chance, tell us what happened. And Raphael and Mateo stick to the story that they weren't there, they don't know anything. And that is when Perry says, okay, well, meet my lead investigator, Paul Drake. And Paul tells them what he found. Perry is really pissed off. He feels like the brothers lied to him. And he gets so mad that he says, you know what? I'm probably just going to give the gun to Paul here to give to the prosecutor so they can hang you. And he starts walking out, and that's when the brothers come clean on what actually happened. They tell all of them that they just wanted a quick, easy score. That's it. When they saw Brooks in the car, they figured that that would be the easy mark. Car like that, he's got to have a lot of cash on him. Mateo had the gun. Raphael was supposed to walk up and take his money, but Brooks fought back. Raphael started screaming for Mateo to do something, so he shot him in the head. So the boys give Perry a confession, but none of it really makes sense to any of them. Paul, Della, Perry, that story just doesn't really add up. But Perry's not really in the right mind frame to think about this. He's so upset that he was lied to. He wants off the case, but both Della and Paul say you can't. Unfortunately, you're stuck defending these guys. They deserve a defense, and if you hop off the case, you're all but sending them to the gallows. And at that moment, Perry doesn't really care because they are guilty. He screams at both Paul and Della, what, they should go free after killing a father, a citizen? This is ridiculous. But he also knows that Della and Paul are right. He's stuck defending these guys. So he storms back in the courthouse and tries to make a plea deal with the prosecution. He meets with Milligan and Berger and proposes a deal, but neither of them want to do it. Milligan especially is really, really smug about it. And Perry says, you're telling me you have no idea what Brooks McCutcheon was into? I mean, there are people dancing all over this kid's grave around town. Milligan stares at Perry and just says, yeah, he's bluffing. And Perry shoots back, am I? Because I have a real pretty half-dead girl with Brooks' name written all over it. And Perry can tell by Milligan's face that Milligan had no idea about this. So Perry really enjoys saying, oh, you missed that one, didn't you? He tries one last-ditch plea, reminding the prosecution that he only needs to sway one juror. They need to convince 12. But Berger tells him, we have enough evidence. We're not going to do a deal. That night, Perry meets up with Strickland and has dinner with him, and Strickland's working for the prosecution. So he kind of mocks Perry for even thinking that the prosecution would settle with him. He tells him that the prosecution has been getting on detectives, just like himself, to dig into the clients and find out everything they can. But thanks to the prosecution and also the pull of Lydell McCutcheon, it's not just Perry's clients who are being dragged through the mud, it's also Perry himself. Lydell has made it his mission to sully the name of Perry Mason. There are 4 stories in the newspaper all about Mason, ripping him, calling him things like Maggot Mason. So Perry's a little stressed out about the situation, and he turns to Pete and says, look, what's it going to take to make all of this go away? But Strickland isn't going to give Perry any information because he gets his paycheck signed from Hamilton Burger, not from Perry Mason. That doesn't mean the two aren't friends, though. They read another story about Lydell McCutcheon regarding his prized racehorse, and they decide, you know what, let's go ride that thing. So they go to the stables, drunk, they break in, and Perry hops on this racehorse and starts zipping around the park. And he's having the time of his life until they're caught. The lights go on, the horse throws Perry off of him, and they get the hell out of there. The fact they almost got caught, though, really pisses off Pete, who screams at Perry, I told you this was going to happen. I'm going home. I got to be up and work in 2 hours. And when Perry asks, what, to kiss Burger's ass? He yells back at Perry, I'm just trying to keep my job, Perry. So Perry wasn't really expecting that response from his friend. The next day, Perry heads to Teddy's school. He blows right past Miss Ames and finds Teddy and says, come on, grab your stuff. We're getting out of here. It might be just he has to go, or it might be that he's worried about repercussions from Lydell McCutcheon if he finds out who took his horse. But Perry is clearly in a rush. And one of the parents makes a snide remark about the way Perry is treating his son. But when that same parent calls Perry Maggot Mason, Perry just instinctively pulls back and punches him in the face. Even Perry's surprised by his actions. Everybody's shocked. And Miss Ames holds Teddy back and just says to Perry, get out of here. I'll take him home. Perry's so disappointed in his behavior that he just goes to the movies and even turns down the cheapest blowjob I've ever heard of, 25 cents. He gives the girl 50 cents to just go away. But it turns out that was a genius move because late that night, as Perry is sitting with his thoughts in his apartment, he gets a knock at the door, and it's Miss Ames. She got his place from the registrar's office, and she wants to let him know that Teddy got home okay. She also brings Perry food. After a little bit of awkwardness, Perry finally gets the message and invites her in, and she gladly accepts that invitation. But somebody at that law firm was working that day. Della headed to go have lunch with Camilla Nygaard. She starts asking her about Brooks's business affairs. If Brooks tried to get any other investors into the baseball stadium like he did with Camilla. But Camilla completely changes the subject, getting it on to the relationship between Perry and Della. And after a little bit of back and forth, Della admits that while it can be rocky at times, Perry is her best shot at getting her own name on her own firm. Now, the last member of the team, Paul, didn't go to work that day, but he was clearly thinking about the job. He and his wife finally get the house themselves, and he's just not in the mood to do what you would want to do with your wife when you finally get the house to yourself. And what he can't shake is what the boys told him. That story doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, these boys getting the perfect shot on a moving target. So it's his wife who says, Paul, you're an investigator. Go investigate. Now, we got 45 minutes. Let's get on with this thing. After the 45 minutes, and when nighttime hits, Paul decides to do just that, investigate. He heads down to the Hooverville, finds the guy who is selling the guns, and brings him beer and food to tell him a little bit more about selling guns to Rafael and Mateo. He tells Paul that he rented them guns every single day. They would go and practice shooting bottles every single day, which doesn't add up to the story that they were collecting bottles. The thing that Paul can't figure out is where they got the money to rent guns every single day. But what is clear to him is that they were practicing for something. Shortly after Paul leaves, Mateo's wife wakes up in the middle of the night. The last time they went to go visit Rafael and Mateo, Rafael slipped her a note. It was a drawing of a car in the Hooverville. So late at night, Sophia sneaks out, she finds the car, and she looks underneath, and there is a whole bunch of cash hidden. But she's caught by Rafael and Mateo's mother, who wants to know what the hell she's doing. And then the last person that we'll discuss is Brooks McCutcheon's business partner, Detective Holcomb. He goes to the Morocco, and it's completely dead on a Friday night. The fire to the rival ship has killed his business. He orders a baked potato only to find out that they're out. They were getting those potatoes for free, but that dried up once Goldstein died. A very annoyed Holcomb says he couldn't get a decent ship from his dad's fleet, but great, he got free cauliflower. Brooks was just a really bad business partner. Holcomb mentions how it wasn't until 5 months ago Brooks started throwing money their way. The next day, he goes to what was Goldstein's produce to find out exactly what business arrangement Brooks had with them, but the new boss has no idea. He tells the guy, look, I don't care, I'm more interested in the financial particulars of this arrangement. What was the play? Where was the money coming from? Who was getting a cut? But the guy still says, I don't know. So Holcomb goes to talk to the drivers. And the driver who delivered to the Morocco just so happens to be the same guy who had his face chewed off by Lydell. Doesn't take much for the guy to admit that he did in fact deliver to the Morocco. Holcomb tells him that he's pretty sure Brooks was running some kind of game, and he was making good money off of it. He just wants to figure out what it was. He tells him that if he helps him add everything up, then there might be something in it for him. And the guy tells him that Brooks and Goldstein had them running trucks outside regular businesses for about 5 months. But all they were moving was vegetables. They would pick up the produce from the ships in the middle of the night when nobody was around, and sometimes he would bring the load down to the Morocco. Holcomb asked the guy why in the world a ship would be coming in with vegetables. They're in California. They're flush with veggies. And the driver says, I have no idea. Ask the McCutcheons. It was their ship. Thank you so much for checking out this recap. Please consider subscribing to the channel and subscribing to my Patreon. Hit thumbs up if you liked it. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought it sucked. If you left a comment, I don't get back to you. I usually don't check the comments unless they're like a super comment. Also, if you don't see the next video up on the end screen, not to worry. It'll be up in a day or two.